I'm about 40, and hitting this milestone has really made me reflect over the last 20 years. If I could sit down with my younger self, these are things that I would tell myself. Let's dive in.
Always works.
Point number one, choose your spouse well. Now, this is a lesson that I learned really early in life. And since I learned this at an early age, this is one thing that has benefited me tremendously, and I would not be in the place that I am today without my spouse. I met my wife around my 20s, and I found her in church, and I really was drawn to her because of her character. Yes, she's a very beautiful woman, but ultimately it was her inner character that drew me more than her outer beauty. And many people really don't think about this, but your spouse, your wife, your husband, they're really going to dictate what your future is going to look like. Needless to say, I found someone truly special. We've been married for 17 years. In a few months here, soon it'll be 18 years. And I can't really imagine my life without her. It would be very difficult and very hard if I didn't have my wife with me. Now, this is not to say that my marriage is without issues. I don't think there's any marriage that's perfect. I don't think there's any marriage without issues. But we better be choosing very well, because if we know that marriage can be very difficult and very hard, imagine if you're married to someone who's very difficult and hard to be married with. It's going to make marriage even more hard. And ultimately, when we're looking for a spouse, wife, or husband, we really should be looking to the Lord for that. And even in Proverbs, it talks about how a prudent wife is from the Lord. In Proverbs, it talks about how fathers can give us wealth, they can give us houses, they can give us an inheritance. But a father cannot provide a good wife. That comes straight from the Lord. And if a good wife comes from the Lord, I better be looking to see what the Lord has to say about what a good wife looks like. Now, some of you are going to be looking for spouses, you're going to be looking for wives and husbands in all the wrong places. You're going to be looking at the club, you're going to be looking at the nightlife, and to be honest, there's probably not much good that you're going to find there, especially if you're a Christian. If your wife or your husband, if they're really big on partying when you meet them, what makes you think that they're going to change once when you get married? If you marry your spouse and they were promiscuous before you got married, what makes you think they're going to change once when you get married? We need to be very picky about who we're going to spend the rest of our life with. That doesn't mean that you're looking for perfection, but you do want someone who is gravitating to something that you both can align with. And for me, I needed someone who could align with my Christian values. I wanted a wife who loved and honored and served the Lord, who loved to be around God's people, and who loved to fellowship with those who are called by his name. And let me tell you, I think that is probably one of the biggest reasons why we're still married, because there's many issues that we've had in our marriage, but that one common denominator, which is Christ, is what has kept us together. It's been the glue that has kept us together throughout this journey, even when there was times when we didn't really like each other. Point number two, spend time with older people, especially when you're young. There's something about being around older people that changes your perspective in life. Older people have seen things you haven't seen, and they've been to places you haven't been to, and they have a wealth of wisdom that's just available to you if you reach out to the right older person. Now, I'm not saying that all older people are wise, because to be honest, there's some old fools. There's some people who are really old, but they're still very foolish, and they're really easy to kind of figure and pick out. You know who the older foolish people are and who the older wise people are. When I was young, when I first became a Christian, when I was 18, 19, and in my early 20s, I was in a men's group that has absolutely benefited me in many ways that I probably can't even comprehend right now. Many of the men in this group were more than twice my age, and that seen things and done things and been around things that I had never seen and done and been around. But that time in my life created such a strong foundation that I still benefit from today. And I know that I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I wasn't around those older people when I was younger. Now, later on in life, I kind of fell away from that habit of surrounding myself with older people, but recently I've kind of picked that habit back up, and I can't tell you how refreshing it is. It's so good to be around people who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and you just feel so much smarter when you're around people like that, and you feel like you kind of have the cheat code in life. Like these people, they've kind of played the levels that you're going to be playing soon, and they already know almost kind of what to do. So if you get a chance and you have some older people in your life, don't just view them as, dumb, or view them as, oh, they're just old and they don't know anything. No, they know a lot more than what you think. And you'll benefit greatly if you sit down and you listen to the wisdom that they have. It can save you a lot of headaches in life. The next point is let go of the need to be right all of the time. Proverbs 12:15 says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice." This is one of those things that I think that the Lord constantly works on me with. And unfortunately, I'm definitely not perfect in this area. Definitely not perfect in this area. I think most people desire to be right. They want to be right. They want to think that their ways are right. They want to think that the advice and the information that they have is always right, but that's not always true. Sometimes we're not right. And there may be even times that you truly are right, but sometimes you don't have to express that opinion or that fact that may be true. I think personally that there's been times in my life that I may have had a negative impact on a relationship because I wanted to be right. And it's not always beneficial for a relationship to always be in the right. And I can't tell you, I probably messed this up with family, friends. I know I messed it up with my wife plenty of times, and my kids, they probably can tell you that, hey, dad always always thinks he's right. But that's really just rooted in pride and ego. And sometimes we just need to let that go away. Sometimes we just need to choose the path of humility. And sometimes we need to just let go of our need of being right. And this is because it may be beneficial to keep a relationship from falling apart. Nobody wants to be around someone who always thinks they're right anyway. That's just such a bad environment to be around. Which leads me to my next point, which is don't spend time arguing with people who don't want to understand. Sometimes people like arguing for the sake of arguing, and the older I get, the more I realize that there's just some topics that you just cannot talk with people. Some people can handle it, but then some people can't handle certain topics. And I think it's all about knowing your audience as well, because there are times when people are truly curious about a thought, or just they're curious about the way you think about a certain topic. But then there's just some people who they just want to debate and argue. They don't really want to learn. They don't want to converse. They just want to be right. And you have to distinguish between the two, because not all debates are healthy. Some debates are very unhealthy. And even though in this debate you may be right about it, it may be a good thing to kind of step back and just kind of keep your thoughts and opinions to yourself. One thing that you hear about a lot is people talking about their truth. And there's really no such thing as your truth and my truth. The only thing that's really true is the truth. But sometimes people are so invested into the lies that they want to believe is true. And there's nothing that you can do to really change their mind. And you have to accept that. You have to let people live in their lives. I'm not going to say their truth, because oftentimes they're living a lie. Next point that I want you to focus on is choose your friends wisely. You're going to become like the people that you're around. If you want to know what you're going to be like in a few years, just look at the people who you're around right now. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Some people think that they can hang out with anybody and that's not going to affect their character and who they'll become, but that's very far from the truth, and that's not how things work. If you've ever lived up north and you move down south for a while and you go back up north, what are the things that people are going to say to you? And the reason why they're going to say that you sound like somebody from the South is because you've picked up some of the mannerisms, you've picked up the accent, and you've been around them so much that it's affected the way that you talk. The same goes with the people that we're around. Eventually, the things that they do is going to affect us, and people are going to be able to see that. The connections in your life, they're going to affect the trajectory of your life. They're going to affect where you're going to go to in the future. If you want to know what you're going to be like in the next few years, just look at the people who you're hanging around right now, and that's going to tell you where you're going to be at in the next few years. The next one is something that people may not really think about much, but I want you to pay close attention to this. The next point is, don't be a drunkard. Now, I didn't say that you couldn't drink responsibly and drink socially and things like that, but I think there's a big difference between being a drunk and being someone who just drinks on occasion. In Proverbs 23, there's a whole section that's dedicated to people who are addicted to alcohol and the impacts that it can have on their life. When people drink and they get drunk, they tend to make poor decisions. You know, if you're sober, you can make good decisions, you can make sound decisions, but when you're impaired, when you're drunk, it really makes it very difficult for you to make wise choices in that state. Oftentimes when people are ruled by alcohol, they make choices that can affect them for the rest of their lives. They make life-altering decisions that can change their lives or change somebody else's life. And sometimes, in worst-case scenarios, people lose their lives over alcohol. And sometimes when people get drunk, they reveal things that they shouldn't be revealing to people. It's kind of like, you ever heard of alcohol being like truth medicine? You know, someone tells exactly what they think and what they believe and what they feel. And that sometimes is not helpful because there's some things that's just not meant to be revealed to people that we think in our innermost being. And there's just some things that need to be kept secret. And so when someone gets drunk or they get a little tipsy, they lose that ability to keep things secret that really should be a secret. And relationships can be destroyed as a result of that. Many people who have ruined their lives with alcohol recognize the importance of this next point. Your reputation is built in years and can be destroyed in seconds. It could take months and years to earn somebody's trust, and you can lose it all in a few seconds with doing something that's just really stupid. How many times have we heard stories of prominent pastors or even like politicians who lived a life and on the outside it looked very moral, but on the inside it was very immoral, and there was some big scandal, some huge thing with adultery or money issue that caused people to lose trust and lose faith in that person. In Proverbs, it tells us that a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. Now, there's many things that the world has to offer. There's so many things that can cause you to have a damaged reputation that society will give you. But your reputation is more important than the money that you can obtain. It's better than that promotion you can get. Sometimes people are willing to compromise their values and the things that they've been taught in life just to obtain a certain status or a certain amount of money. And you have to be okay with not having those things, because ultimately, if you get those things, eventually somebody's going to find out that you did something wicked to get that. And let's say if nobody ever finds out, well, There's one that knows. The Lord knows. He sees everything. And you should be living your life not to please people, but ultimately to please and seek the favor of God. Now, there's some people who have lost their reputation because of a scandal that they've done. They've lost their reputation because maybe it was a pastor and they committed adultery. And if you talk to them, some of them probably wish that they can take that back. Some people make a little compromise here, a little compromise there. Before they know it, they're in a place that they never expected that they would be in. And sometimes people don't compromise their values just to get certain status. Sometimes people compromise their values to fit in, which leads me to my next point. Don't compromise your values to fit in. If there's one thing that I want to be able to do every night is I want to be able to lay my head on the pillow and I want to have a conscience that is clear. When I go to sleep at night, I want to know that I've made the right choices. I've made the right decisions. A man should keep his conscience at all costs. A woman should keep her conscience at all costs. It's okay to forego an opportunity to avoid doing something that's wrong. And eventually in life, you're going to hit that point and you're going to be asked to do something that's wrong so you can gain something. It's the same trick that Adam and Eve faced in the garden with Satan. Satan offered them a temptation to be like God. And he said all they needed to do was to eat this fruit that God told them not to eat. So the question I have to ask you is, what is that fruit in your life that God doesn't want you to eat? And I think it's real simple. There's things that are really clear and spelled out in the Bible. It's those small everyday choices that we make. There's ways to make small compromises here, small compromise there. And before you know it, a few months or a year from now, you'll find yourself in a place that you never thought you would find yourself in before. Most people don't start off in bad places. It's honestly small decisions that they've made over a course of time. The decisions you've made yesterday will affect where you're at today, and the decisions you make now will affect where you're at tomorrow. Be a constant student. What does it mean to be a constant student? Oftentimes when people graduate high school and college or whatever school they graduate from, they quit learning. And that is a huge mistake. We should always be driving to learn more, obtaining more knowledge, because knowledge ultimately is going to get us from point A to point B. And without that knowledge, without knowing how to do something, you'll never get to that place that you want to go to in life. Reading books and watching videos that will help you learn is so vital for growth. And being a student doesn't stop at reading and watching videos. It's also about watching other people do things that you may want to do in the future. Wisdom is learning from the successes of people, but it's also learning about the failures of people as well. Sometimes the best way to learn from someone is to watch someone who they do things that's not right. And you look at that person and you say, you know what? I see that thing that they did that was wrong. I see that thing that they did that wasn't right. And I've noticed their outcome. And because I've noticed their outcome, I'm not going to do that. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes people are doing things that are wrong and it looks like they're benefiting. That's why it's good to know what the scriptures say about the end result of the wicked person. See, people who are benefiting or appearing to look like they're benefiting from not following God, the Bible tells us what their end looks like, and it's not pretty. Some of the greatest lessons you can learn from people is what to do and what not to do. And I save this point for last because ultimately I think it's the most important point that anyone can get out of this video, which is trust in Christ. Proverbs 3 verses 5 through 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. The older I get in life, the more I realize that I'm really lacking in this area. And if I get this thing right, I really believe that a lot of the other issues that I have in life would resolve itself. The more I trust in Christ, the less I worry. And the more I put my trust in Jesus, the more hopeful I am for my future. These are just 10 of the lessons that I've learned over the years that I've been alive, and there's plenty more lessons that I have. If this resonated with you, just let me know in the comments. And if you want me to do 10 more life lessons, I'd love to do another video like this. I think this is helpful and beneficial, not just for you, but it's also beneficial for me because it helps me think through a lot of things that I've gone through in life. And if you got wisdom of your own that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. Just leave a comment below. See you in the next video. If you like what you saw today, subscribe and tap that notification bell. Until next time, stay diligent.
Want more? Watch one of these videos next. And don't forget to subscribe to stay updated.